Welcome everyone to Kauka Vimarsh, and welcome to all the Kauka members as well as all the people from all over the US and even Canada who have joined us today. Today we are very fortunate because we are going to address a topic which we all try to deal with. Yes, exactly. Try to deal with in our lives, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But that's when we need professionals like Akshata Nayak, who have the training and the knowledge, and she's so nice to share it with us today. She's going to help us deal with what we all try on a daily basis to deal with stress through lifestyle changes and through dietary changes. So I'll just hand it over to Akshata. Akshata, if you can please introduce yourself in today's Kauka Vimarsh, and if you can please let us know if you want or everybody to hold on to their questions till the very end, or is it okay if people ask their questions during the session, and how would you like people to ask their questions? Thank you, Akshata. Thank you for coming today.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity. Vermont Antasa, so I'm 3 hours ahead. My daughter is getting ready for her bedtime, so you might hear her in the background. Just ignore that. Thank you, Preeti, and thank you, Kedar, so much for this opportunity to be here today. I attended the first Vimarsh, and it was incredibly informative. So I hope that even today I'm able to give you some new information to think of and ideas and suggestions when it comes to managing stress in your lives by making a few changes to your lifestyle and dietary routines. These are two aspects that I don't think enough people think about when it comes to managing stress. So I like to bring focus to that. And let me just share my screen so that I can share the presentation I have with everyone. Okay, can everyone see that, Preeti? Yeah, okay. Great. Okay. So my name is Akshata Nayak. I run Alternative Roots Wellness Center with my husband, Greg. We are based in Vermont. The letters after my name, basically I have 2 Master of Science degrees. I have an MS in Biochemistry and a Master of Science degree in Applied Clinical Nutrition. So that's the MS-ACN. So clearly I've been in school way too long, and I'm happy to share the information that I've gathered along the way. Miguel email Hangasa, I've given my email. You're welcome to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. You don't have to be our patient to ask us questions, and that's something we have been, we established when we started the clinic, because it's nice to be able to just point people in the right direction when they need it. And for today, you can ask me questions as we go along. You'll have to unmute and do that, or you can wait until the end. Whatever works for you, I'm fine either way. So it's up to you guys. So then let's get started. What is stress? That's the first question, right? What exactly is stress? Now, this can be difficult to define because it is so subjective. What is stressful to me may not be stressful for somebody else. But overall, it's a physiological response to change that occurs. And basically, when your body senses danger, whether it's real or it's perceived, so it's something that's actually happening or you imagine will happen. And those of us who deal with anxiety can understand this, where we continuously run simulations of situations that can occur. So real or perceived, your body defenses kick in, and this helps you rise to the challenge, and this response is immediate. This is very important because it results in a phenomenon called fight or flight. So you either stay in the situation and face it, or you find a way to get away from the situation as soon as possible. And you might have heard of this phrase, fight or flight. It is a vital response for survival and a way that people, humans as a species, has evolved so far. So now if I'm explaining or defining stress in such positive manner, then the question comes up, what is the problem? The problem is that acute stress and chronic stress are not the same thing. Acute stress is something that happens for a short period of time. An example would be you're driving your car and the vehicle in front of you stops suddenly. You have to then get the brakes on soon enough that you don't crash into the other vehicle. You might feel your heart rate going up. You need to take a few deep breaths. You might say a few words you weren't expecting to. But when the car ahead of you moves on, you can move on as well. It was a quick stress situation. You handled it, you can move on. Chronic stress, on the other hand, is when these stress systems are called in to action again and again and again, to the point where it starts impacting your overall health. And that is a problem. Something else I wanted to underline today was just this idea that common does not automatically mean normal. Right now, especially for us, everyone is stressed. That's just become the default status, because who would have imagined 6 or 7 months ago we would be doing what we are right now, right? So, but that does not automatically mean this should become our new normal. When you need help, you have to reach out for it. And I say this to men and women. Women tend to, in most cases, downplay what's going on with us, especially when it comes to our health. Men tend to not reach out for help, especially when it comes to mental health concerns. So you have to make sure, especially given our circumstances, that if you need the extra help, you reach out for it. So that's just something that I've been underlining a lot when I speak to people right now. So what is chronic stress? Chronic stress is basically when stress becomes a way of life. You keep worrying about every single thing that can happen. And our body keeps resetting the normal. Our body is incredibly good at this. An example for this, if I think of a physical issue, is you have a backache today, right? And it's going to bother you today. You take some painkillers, it'll bother you tomorrow, the day after. But within just the span of a few days, that now goes to the back burner, right? Your brain has shifted. So your body has reset the normal. You now have to clear that higher bar before your body senses pain again. So either you move in a particular way or you try to do something and you can't, and then you remember, oh, right, I have the backache. So this is essentially what happens with stress as well. Your body keeps resetting it and you think you're getting used to it, your body is balancing itself out, but in reality, your body is fighting itself. And again, this is why it becomes a problem. This whole change kind of creeps up on you. It's not like you flick a switch and today you're fine and tomorrow you're chronically stressed. It's not that way. It creeps up on you. And because of this, diagnosis is difficult. It's difficult to look at somebody and say, oh, these are the symptoms, or this is the exact test you can take to tell you you are on step 2 of the 6 steps of stress or stages or whatever. There's nothing like that. And that's why diagnosis is difficult unless you can sit down with somebody and give a very detailed medical history, health history, family history, if we're talking about anxiety and depression. And basically you need a lot of time. And if you think of our healthcare system, time isn't something that you really associate with it. So sometimes you need to reach out for extra help in addition to what you're doing on a regular basis to take care of yourselves. So what happens behind the scene when someone is stressed? What is going on? I like to talk about the factors that are involved, mostly because I strongly believe if you know what is involved, you will be able to pay attention to it and also fix it better, right? That's the case with any problem. If you know where the problem's stemming from, you'll be able to pay attention and find ways to work on it. So the main thing is that your biochemistry dictates your behavior. It might seem like what we tend to usually downplay stress, right? What do I have to be stressed about? There are other people having worse time, things like that. But you have to understand that even if you may not have the external situations that are dictating you be depressed or anxious or stressed, what is happening inside of you is dictating how you are behaving outside of you. So all the reactions that are going on inside are important. So in the presence of a threat, your brain essentially sends out an alarm saying, okay, something's going on, and your adrenal glands come into play. Now, your adrenal glands are these little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. Once those are kicked on, they release your stress hormones, and you might have heard of these names, adrenaline and cortisol, right? So these are your stress hormones. Now, hormones in our body never exist in vacuum. One affects another. And so when these are released, they affect other hormones. And because of what I told you about stress situations being vital for survival, these hormones are dominant. So the minute they're released, they sort of take over everything else. And that's important for survival. But if this happens enough number of times, it starts affecting these systems in your body that manage blood sugar levels, energy production, sex drive, menstrual cycle, thyroid function, digestive function. So now think about the far-reaching effects that chronic stress can have on you. It's not just one or two things. It starts affecting many important functions in your body. So you essentially go from being a person who's just tearing your hair apart to someone who feels like you're carrying the entire weight of the world on your shoulders. And understand that when you're chronically stressed, you can fluctuate between these two situations within a day. And this is what we call wired and tired. You're either go, 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 go because you have a deadline to meet, or you just have to get your work done and get home. But the minute you do, you're just crashing. You have no energy to just relax and allow yourself to like stare at a wall for a couple of minutes. Your brain doesn't stop. So some symptoms that you can watch out for yourself or for somebody else that, you know, one of your loved ones. What are the symptoms of chronic stress? Are there things that you can look out for? This is by no means a full list, but these are the ones I commonly see with my patients. Energy crashing in the afternoon. Suddenly you feel like you need an extra sweet or you need extra caffeine to get through the day because you are so exhausted. Wanting to drink coffee or tea because you enjoy the taste is very different from needing it because you can't function, right? So one of those, you need to have a conversation with somebody. And you think, oh, if I'm so exhausted in the afternoon, then maybe I'll get some good sleep tonight, but you're tired and cannot sleep. And that's extremely frustrating. You might even get a second wind in the evening. So, you know, when you're at home, you're ready to, okay, fine, I'm so exhausted, I'm going to sleep. But hey, look, I can clean my house now. Or you suddenly start doing other things. So you get this sort of second wind in the evenings, which is messing with your sleep cycle. You fall sick easily, especially getting colds. You tend to get those very easily. If anyone in your zip code has it, suddenly you have sniffles. You're not able to focus. Decision-making can be affected, memory issues. So chronic stress can have some cognitive problems as well. Food cravings. Normally my patients talk about how I never really wanted to find something crunchy to eat before, but then that's all I look for now, something packaged and crunchy. Or somebody just in the last few days had told me, I used to always eat healthy, but now all I can think of are peppermint patties, right? So odd food cravings that you haven't had before. You gain weight, especially around your abdomen, so it's visceral fat. You're anxious and overwhelmed and you feel emotionally sort of overactive. You feel like for every situation, you just react emotionally to it. You wish you could stop it, but you can't stop yourself. So these are some of the things to watch out for. There might be people who have a few or all of them. It depends on how long it's been going on. So what can you do? I've told you what stress is, what happens behind the scenes, and just bombarded you with symptoms and everything else that you can watch out for. But what can you do? If you really have these concerns, what are the things that you can do to help yourself? There are lifestyle changes, dietary changes. Can you really use supplements to help yourself? And what role does exercise play? Now, the suggestions that I have today are basic ones. These are the ones I start out with all of my clients. And then we work to build on it depending on the individual. And as time goes by, we see what's working, what's not. So these might be things you're already doing. If you need more information, you can ask me questions today or get in touch with me. We can talk about it. Or I would strongly encourage that you start including these in your life right now. So let's start out with some lifestyle changes. I like to say Om, not ah. So essentially saying yoga is good, right? And if you aren't someone who can do the asanas or you're not interested in that part of it, then focus on some simple stretching on a daily basis. Concentrate on your breath while you're stretching or while you're doing your asanas. And deep breathing has been consistently shown to reduce stress markers. And so that's important to know. You can just do a deep breath in, long breath out. You can do alternate nostril breathing. You can do counted breathing, whichever one works for you. But make sure you take some time out to do this. And then stretches also for your neck and shoulder and head area, because if you think about it, that's where we carry most of our stress, right? So you can just make sure, big one would be, are you clenching your jaw? Unclench it. Use your hands and just circular motions around your cheeks, under your ear, behind your ear, on the sides of your neck, at the back of your neck. Just circular motions, just loosening those muscles up. head forward and back, neck, side to side. And the other thing I want everyone to pay attention to, just given the number of screens all of us are on these days, we tend to have our head pushed forward. And for every degree that you push your head forward, you put an enormous amount of pressure on your spine. So just using your index finger on your chin and just pushing your head back helps you regain a better posture. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. If you can have somebody at home work out these muscles for you, that's even better. But if not, you can do it for yourself, just essentially stretching the neck and shoulder area. Meditation is incredibly helpful also. You can do, if it's a mantra you repeat, or shloka you're saying, or you do guided imagery, whichever one works for you is fine. For some people that doesn't work, and I'm one of those defective people that traditional meditation doesn't work no matter the app I try or the type I try. So for me, I try to find an activity that will take my complete focus for a short period of time. Previously, it was pottery. Once I moved, I found like coloring helps, creative outlets, they definitely help, gardening, something that takes your full focus so that you aren't getting distracted by a lot of other things in your head. And you want to do this even if it's 5 to 10 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes, whatever works for you is fine. And make this time for yourself. That's very important. When you're sitting in bed, I mean, I have a 2.5-year-old, so my day starts early, but I still try when I wake up in the morning, even if she's in the crib waiting, I do take a minute for myself and just take a few deep breaths. And I see that that makes a difference relative to when I didn't used to do it. So make sure you make this time for yourself. Reducing caffeine and alcohol intake. I already said about caffeine, tea and coffee because you like the flavor, very different from needing it to function. Caffeine and alcohol affect those stress hormones in completely different ways, but they have a big impact on it. And so you want to try and reduce that just to help yourself. So those are some lifestyle changes. I know they might seem really simplistic, but do understand that the smallest steps that you take can have big impacts as they add up, right? So the next one I'd like to talk about are the dietary changes that you can look at. The first one would be eating more often. People find it interesting that when they come to me to lose weight or whatever, I either tell them you need to eat more or you need to eat more often. And it seems counterintuitive, but it really makes a difference. So you do like a breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, and dinner. If you want to do just one snack, then you sort of fit it in between the two meals that have the widest gap. So instead of thinking of 3 traditional meals, break it up into 4 or 5 meals. It doesn't mean you eat more and gain weight. It means you're eating the same amount, but spread over more meals. This is important because it prevents blood sugar spikes and crashes, because whatever goes up has to come down. So this helps prevent the blood sugar spikes and then the cravings that come with it. And you have better energy through the day, so that afternoon crash can really be addressed if you just add in a snack here and there. And it controls your weight better. If you're somebody who's diabetic or has other health issues where your diet needs to be more controlled and managed, then yes, you need some professional help to make sure you're doing it well. But in general, I can say that if you can eat about every 2.5 to 3 hours, that helps keep your blood sugar steady. Your blood sugar staying steady has a direct impact on how stressed you're feeling, right? The whole idea of being hangry, angry when you're hungry, that just sort of gets the stress hormone system started again. You want to never skip breakfast. And this isn't only to set you up for the day, but also to recover from the night that has passed. During night is when your body does a lot of its repair work, a lot of recovery and healing. And so when you wake up, it's sort of starving for nutrients. And so it's best to give it something when you wake up. About an hour to an hour and a half within waking up, if you can eat something, that will be helpful. And think outside the breakfast foods box. I mean, there's no written rule anywhere that says you can't have dinner for breakfast if dinner was delicious and you really want some more. You just want to make sure that it's a well-balanced meal. You have some protein, you have your grains, you have your carbohydrate, you have your fat. As long as that's a combination, then you can eat pretty much anything. A good quality protein shake can also work for those of us who need something fast I can never have a big breakfast, like sitting down and making a full breakfast. So I always do a protein shake and, then have something a little later. Eating a variety of foods, so a rainbow on your plate. Every color indicates a different set of nutrients that are in the food. So the more colors you can get over, say, a week or 2 weeks, not within a day, but over a week or 2 weeks, the more colors you can incorporate, the better it is. And I always think back now of being in India and mom cooking certain things that were available only during the monsoon season, or eating seasonally. That is something that we have lost. So a good way to make up for that is just trying new ingredients that you haven't tried before, even if it's as simple as a new herb you haven't tried before or whatever. If you need recipes, please get in touch. I'll be happy to find some for you, depending on whatever food it is you're interested in. And look at more than just the usual vegetables, because grocery shopping can seem really boring after a period of time. So try and find things that you don't normally go for, and foods that sort of smell bad when you're cooking them, like cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, turnip. These are all really good for you. So it's good to include these in your diet, and leafy greens as well. So those are some basic dietary changes that you can incorporate. And let's go on to the next one, which is about supplements. Now, I'm a bit of an odd nutritionist, because when it comes to supplements, I say you should question the need for them. It's a huge industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry at this point. There are companies putting out products on a very regular basis. And right now with COVID and the virus, there are already companies putting out saying this is great to boost your immune system, and this is good for keeping the virus away. No research has been done. These are just claims. So you really have to question the need for supplements and ask yourself some of these questions. Do you need them? Who is recommending them? Is it a friend? Is it the salesperson in the store? Or is it someone who actually has the professional backing to tell you to do this? And it might seem like a silly thing to include in a presentation, but I often see people who come into my clinic with bags of supplements, and then I go through them, and you sort of basically end up asking them if you just pour milk on it and eat it as cereal, because after a point of time, how are you taking these and why are you taking so many? Can you get the nutrient from food instead? Do you need the supplement? Do you have a specific deficiency that is calling for a short-term supplementation, or long-term for some people? Do you have a specific deficiency, or can you just eat more of a variety in your diet and improve things for yourself? That is an important question as well, because at the end of the day, you're going to be spending money on this stuff. You want to get the most bang for your buck. What form of the supplement should you take? I'll use calcium as an example here, because everyone takes calcium supplements. Many people I know, not everyone. So the most common form of calcium you'll find in a supplement is calcium carbonate. That is essentially chalk. Your body can't absorb and utilize all the nutrients that are in there very well. The best form of calcium to take would be a citrate, a malate, a glycinate. So it's important to turn that bottle around, see what the ingredients are, and see if you're getting the right forms. If you're spending money, get the most bang for your buck. A lot of people tend to think, it's better than nothing. Not always, because there are certain ingredients that might actually be a problem for you. How many should you take? You should take as few as possible for very specific concerns, rather than multivitamins or vitamins that you feel like you're just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what will stick and work for you. It's best to take as few as possible. And this is important because just as medications can interact with each other, supplements can interact with each other, and they can interact with medications. So you always have to make sure to give a full list of supplements, herbs, whatever you might be taking to your doctor, and give a full list of your medications to your dietitian or nutritionist, because they need to be able to look in that and make sure there are no interactions. What do I mean by this? An example would be, if you are on blood thinners, you have to be very careful about the dosage of fish oils and garlic supplements that you take. And those are two very common supplements that a lot of people with cardiovascular problems usually are on. Fish oils and garlic are both blood thinners. So now you're on 3 different blood thinners, and that's definitely a problem. So this is something you need to have someone who can look at your list of medications and supplements and make sure there's no interaction going on there. And you also should not assume that something being natural and herbal automatically is safe. And this is very important to know, because again, everyone says something is better than nothing. What's the harm in taking it? It can be harmful. And I've had patients who've been taking certain medications or certain herbs that have interacted and caused problems. So it's just something to really be wary about. What are the nutrients that can help you if you are interested? I have stopped including dosages in my presentation for two reasons. First one being that the dosage depends on the individual, so I can't give like a generalized dosage. And the second I realized was when I did these workshops and I gave a list of dosages, people would take all of them at once. And that was not the point of the talk at all. And so I stopped doing dosages, but instead what I do is I give a list of foods that you can include in your diet if you aren't already. And if there are questions, I can always answer them. So fish oils are very useful for people who are undergoing an enormous amount of stress. Fish oils being EPA and DHA. So when you take a fish oil bottle and you flip it at the back, you will see EPA and DHA. Of course, you can get this from oily fish like salmon, mackerel. You can get it from good quality meats. You can also get it from nuts and seeds. This isn't exactly EPA and DHA. It's like one step before that. And your body has to do the conversion. But you can certainly take that, and that's not a problem, just adding it into your diet. Vitamin C is incredibly helpful for energy production, as well as the pathways that start and stop stress hormone production, just sort of maintaining that balance. A good source of vitamin C are actually red and yellow peppers that have more vitamin C than citrus fruits. So this is something that I tell my patients often, is to include this, with maybe some hummus as a snack a few times a week, red and yellow peppers. Even the orange ones, basically the bright colored peppers. Citrus fruits, of course, and dark green vegetables are all good sources of vitamin C. Vitamin D is very important for many different functions in our body. In fact, over the past 10 years, they have found an enormous number of cells in our body, different types, that have vitamin D receptors, which means that it affects us in many different ways. And you have to think about how most of the summer we have sort of stayed indoors, right? We're just sort of finding our way out now, but most of the summer we have stayed indoors. For those of us who live in the Northeast, where we get like full sunshine maybe for 6 hours in the year, it's something we also have to keep in mind, right? How are we getting the vitamin D? You need cholesterol to make vitamin D. So if you are on any cholesterol lowering medications, that is something to pay attention to. The best way to get it is to go out in the sun without sunscreen, but that is risky for a lot of people. So it's not something I can say, please go out and get your sun. So you have to get it from other sources like organ meats, really who eats liver, on a regular basis. And you can get some from mushrooms. But vitamin D, I believe, is one that does require supplementation if you're deficient. And you can get tested for this very easily if you talk to your doctor about it. So get tested and see if you need it. The dosage will depend on what your levels are like. Vitamin B. People who are chronically stressed essentially burn through all their vitamin Bs. So vitamin B, it's a complex. There are multiple different B vitamins. And B vitamins is one where you should take it as a complex, not individual, if you can help it. And the reason is that they work together. So if you take just one, you're creating a bottleneck. So you need to take it as a complex. The foods that are rich in it, you have beans, legumes, nuts, whole grains, poultry, and eggs. And magnesium is the last one I want to talk about. This is very good even for people who have pain issues. So, if you have any type of body aches and fatigue and things like that, magnesium is very important. It's sort of a gatekeeper for a lot of these hormones. And so it's really good to include in your diet all of these different foods. Dark green leafy vegetables have a very high amount of magnesium in them. Nuts and seeds, fish, beans, lentils, avocados, bananas. Basically what I want you to pay attention to overall, because I'm throwing a lot of different foods out at you, is the idea of having a variety in your diet. And as long as you have that, your nutrient levels should be okay, unless of course you have health concerns that need to be addressed. But yeah, these are all the different nutrients that can help you feel better. So the last one I want to talk about is the role of exercise in managing your stress levels. Consistency is key. So it's better to do a little bit every day than to do 1 or 2 hours once or twice a week. So something you can do on a daily basis. Now, if you are stressed, overwhelmed, and anxious, and I tell you get up and exercise, that's going to be difficult, right? So again, it means that you have to dial down what your expectations are for yourself and what the expectation is from the healthcare provider. Moderate intensity exercise is better than high intensity. So you don't need to work out till you're ready to drop, essentially is the idea. Moderate intensity is fine. What is moderate intensity? If you have a tracker, you can use that to check your heart rate and keep, within the right levels. Or the idea is that you can talk, but not very easily, right? So that's something you can use as an indicator. You want to make sure when you're exercising that you feel some elevation in your heart rate, not to the point where you're dropping down or working out till you're exhausted. But the difference between activity and exercise is that your heart rate goes up during exercise. So you want some of that. Otherwise, once your body gets used to it, it becomes activity. It's not considered exercise anymore. So there's a difference. You want to mix up the type of exercises you do as well. And again, it's mostly just to make sure your body and metabolism, everything is still working fine. What can you start out with? I honestly have patients that start out with 30 seconds in the morning, and that's fine. I'm just incredibly proud of them that they're even doing the 30 seconds that they are, because it can be difficult. Like I said, when you're anxious and stressed and overwhelmed, being told to do all of these things can add to all of it. So what you can do is find small steps, choose one, work on it, go on to the next one. So 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever it is, that's fantastic. Just do it and try and do it every single day, because consistency is key. So these are, the few things: lifestyle changes, dietary supplements, nutrients to think of, your exercise. As I said, these might seem, what I've suggested might seem like very simple things to do. Will it really matter? It really does. And also you have to understand that nutrition and diet and lifestyle is not an all or nothing situation, right? So it isn't that you make a list of 10 things and tomorrow morning you have to get all 10 perfect. That's not the idea at all. What I normally do is make a list of goals, prioritize them, and then talk to my patients about how, okay, so for the next 2 weeks, you are going to try and eat a small handful of nuts between your breakfast and your lunch. Once you get used to that, okay, let's work on your lunch. What are you having? Or find another thing. Can you add exercise in the morning now because you're eating a little bit more during the day? What can we do? So make a list, prioritize it, give yourself the time, be good and kind to yourself, because I think we all tend to forget that. And just work on it one step at a time rather than trying to do everything, because that is just going to add to your stress. Patient compliance is going to go down the drain and no one's going to talk to me ever again. So as and when you can, add to it. So I did throw a lot of information at you, but the take-home messages or the most important things to remember are these. Your biochemistry dictates your behavior. So stop downplaying what's going on with you. If you are stressed, talk about it and get the help that you need. You might not think you have enough external conditions that, say you should be stressed or you should be depressed, but things that are going on inside of you might be dictating how you're feeling. And that is legitimate. So you have to reach out for help when you need it. Chronic stress can creep up on you over a period of time. You have to be careful. And stress hormones, when they're released, are the dominant force in our body. They're great for acute situations, like I talked about needing to make sure you focus enough to stop your car on time so that you don't get into a crash, all of that. Acute situations, the stress hormones are very helpful, but over chronic stress situations, the continuous up and down of stress hormones in your body becomes detrimental. Hormones are like a web. One affects the other. Nothing exists in vacuum in our body. And so you have to understand that if your stress hormones are affected and they're the dominant force, it's like a roller coaster. It's going to take everything else with it down. Understand that common is not normal, especially right now. So when you need help, reach out for it. And the things that you can do to help yourself include daily stretching, breathing exercises, don't skip your breakfast and eat smaller meals in a day, variety of food, looking at the colors. When it comes to exercise, your consistency is key. So even if you can do 30 seconds, 1 minute, whatever it is, 20 minutes, great, but do it every day. So find time for yourself that you can do that. Moderate intensity exercise is more beneficial than overexertion. So please don't go and join CrossFit at this point. Do a mix of exercises when possible rather than just one type, just to make sure your metabolism and everything starts functioning properly again, because all of these things impact your stress hormones. So those are some ideas that I've shared. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I have my email here again, so you're welcome to contact me as well. If you have questions or need more help, any research you want to learn about, I'll be happy to share studies. Something that we started when everything shut down is a YouTube channel for Alternative Roots Wellness Center, Vermont. So you can subscribe to that. We put out videos about twice a month addressing some things that are COVID specific. I have some recipes coming up. I plan to do a saruk curry. So you can certainly watch and let me know what you think. So yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Hey, Akshata, this is Vidya. Great presentation. You did a fantastic job.
Oh,
phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah. So a quick question for you. I noticed that you didn't offer like caloric information. So for breakfast, lunch, dinner, do you have any rule of thumb on how much?
Yeah, that's a good question. I normally don't include caloric information, mostly because I've noticed there are people who have issues managing it, tracking it, and then more often than not, especially when we are stressed and if we've put on weight, we tend to eat less, you know, trying to lose the weight and things like that. So I don't include the caloric information. I've worked with a lot of people who have mental health concerns when it comes to food. So that's the reason that I don't. But yeah, that is a good question. Normally, I would say your snack should be about 100 to 200 calories, somewhere in there. And then, you know, if the other rest of your calories get spread over the 3 relatively larger meals of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if you can do 1 snack or 2 snacks, you know, that's about 150 or 200 calories for each or one of them. And then you divide the rest of it over the others. In terms of how much, you know, to eat, it's better to eat a little bit more in the morning than towards the end of the day. So that's just something to keep in mind, but not like you're, you know, eating a gigantic breakfast and barely anything for dinner. It's just balance it out better.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Akshata.
Hi.
Do you have any suggestion for the multivitamin supplements, any brand or?
Yeah, so we actually don't recommend multivitamins in our clinic, mostly because after looking at ingredients and, you know, just thinking about it, that's a lot of stuff to cram into one pill and expect that our body will take and absorb it and actually utilize it properly. I know a lot of people tell me, but, you know, it made me feel better. Yeah, but when you're spending money on something, it's better to spend it on something that's giving you the most benefit. And I don't think multivitamins really sort of live up to all of that. But in terms of like just brands that I do like that are available in the stores, it would be more a health food store. And that Garden of Life is a brand that I like. Then there is, I think Now Foods has some supplements that, you know, they make pretty decent without too many extra added ingredients. But Garden of Life is the one I usually recommend for people that can't access the supplements that I sell in my clinic. The brands that practitioners can sell. If you can't access that, then Garden of Life is the one I recommend.
Wait, Zuki, wait. Hey, stop. Wait right there. Good girls. Down.
There's some pet saying hi somewhere.
Akshata?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For this D3 tablets, because I'm recommended to take that.
Yeah.
And he has prescribed potency of 200.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
IU, international units.
IU,
Yeah.
IU, correct. Yeah, 200 potency, but it is to be taken every day.
Yeah.
But is it okay that, I take it for some time and then stop it, and, because taking it daily is cumbersome.
Yeah, I know. Patient compliance is definitely a concern when it comes to supplements or, managing these things. Yeah, so the recommended daily amount for vitamin D is 400 IU. So if it's a doctor, they normally recommend below that. We actually go over it pretty often, depending on, again, because somehow it seems like because I have had chronic stress and anxiety and depression in my life, that's the person I attract to my clinic the most, the type of patient. And so for them, usually we go higher than the 400 IU. But every day does make a difference. I wish I could tell you, it's fine if you take it a couple of days and not the others. Every day does make a difference, especially when you're taking a low amount like just the 200 IU.
Yeah.
I would suggest definitely taking it every day. There are some that they say, I know that in India, I've heard from a couple of doctors that do like 50,000 IU once a week or like once a month. I forget which one that was, but it's much better that you do smaller doses on a regular basis because your body can absorb and use it better rather than taking higher doses once in a while.
In fact, he had prescribed that also for me, 50,000 IU, but to be taken only once a month or once a week or something. But, I just refuse to take that.
Yeah, that is a lot because if you think about it, you're taking it at one time, and how is your body going to absorb all of it, use it? The other thing with vitamin D is you want to make sure it's a fat, it's an oil. So you can get like little pearls, little tiny capsules that have the oil in it. Yes. Yeah. And you want to make sure you take it with something that's fatty. So, a little bit of avocado, peanut butter, or, something like that. Mostly because that is a very small amount of fat for your body to realize it needs to release all the digestive juices required for fat if you're just taking it by itself. But if you take it with a meal which has some fat in it, then your body knows it has to release all the enzymes and everything else that's needed, so you digest it better.
Okay. Thank you.
Akshata, what do you think of those gummy bears that come, the nature-made gummy bears? That they're very easy to take because I like taking them actually. So
yes, I know. So during my pregnancy, I couldn't take any prenatals. It was just everything was making me sick except those gummies. So I was a nutritionist taking gummy multivitamins during my pregnancy, and every single day a little part of me died. But it really depends when it comes to gummies. I think the brand that's making it, because you can end up with so many different ingredients in it. So, if it's a matter of not taking it at all versus being able to take only that, because I've had patients who can't swallow tablets. I've had patients with other conditions that have basically not allowed them to take the usual supplements as such. Then if that's the situation, then yes, you can take it. I don't know how much you can actually get in terms of benefit from it. I know a lot of people have, some of my patients have told me, but it really helps boost my energy. Well, yes, there's a lot of sugar in it, so of course it's going to boost your energy. But yeah, if you can find a different way to take it, then that's better for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Akshita.
Hi.
Thank you for the very wonderful presentation.
Oh,
I really didn't know that peppers had vitamin C. This is the first time I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I get stressed because my daughter doesn't eat, who is 4-year-old. So how do you make a child eat more of vegetables, or how do you include a lot of nutrients in her diet?
Yeah. So before I became a mom, I used to have this long answer about how kids will be fine and you should, don't hide it in other things and you should give it to them. They should know their food. I used to have this huge thing, right? And then you become a mom and you're like, oh my God, just eat. So, so I can understand. What I like to do is normally, my daughter likes pasta a lot. And my husband Greg makes some fantastic pasta dishes. So for the sauces, we tend to blend and use vegetables. So, even on my YouTube channel, I have a recipe of using butternut squash. to make a pasta sauce, which makes it basically tastes like mac and cheese. But it's a good way of getting like some squash into their diet. You can add carrots to that as well. Today I made a dish which was essentially every vegetable I had left over in my fridge. I just put it all in the food processor and pulsed it up. So it was really, really tiny, and I made like a sauce out of it and combined that with some bread or whatever. So, you know, it does take some, you have to sort of find creative ways to do it, definitely. But overall, I would say in terms of calories, one thing I have learned from our pediatrician, as well as, you know, having worked with some kids over the years, is that kids will eat when they're hungry. They won't, you know, starve themselves. And in many times, they are much better at realizing when they're hungry and not versus adults, because we have very set ideas about at this time I have to eat, right? And that might not be the case with them. So overall, in terms of calories and things like that, I would say, you know, if your kid is sort of saying they want to eat now or they don't stress as much about that. In terms of giving them a variety, yeah, you have to find new ways to sort of make sauces maybe, or blending it. There is this website, people find it very funny when I give them a dessert website, but it's called Chocolate Covered Katie. And you can look her up, and she has different ways of including, you know, like beans and vegetables in either pasta dishes or baked goods, or other ways that, you know, kids might then go ahead and eat it. Of course, it does have an added sugar there, but again, for me, it's always a matter of not eating at all versus eating some of it.
Yeah,
so you always have to, yeah, you're never going to be perfect. There is no perfect diet. There's nobody who follows a perfect diet. And if you do end up thinking about what's considered perfect diets these days, they're very restrictive, and that's not a good place to be in, especially if you have stress. So yeah, so I would recommend looking up that website and some of her pasta sauces and baked goods. You know, she has like a chickpea cookie dough. It's like, it's bizarre, but it's, you know, really high in, it has a good amount of protein in it and everything else. So, you know, there are some ways you do find ways to sneak it in. But otherwise, the other thing our pediatrician always told us with my daughter Ava was that you offer it. And, you know, if they don't eat it more, if they see you eat it, they follow sometimes. And if they don't, you offer it. If they don't eat it, you offer it again. And then you wait for a little while and then offer that food, maybe a month or 2 months later, but you keep trying. I think most of us, as we grow older, our tastes change. I remember when I was younger, I didn't want anything to do with jeera, garlic, capsicum. There were all these things I wanted to have nothing to do with, and now I look for that in a recipe. So, you know, we tend to grow out of it over a period of time. So yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And also one more question, does the stress cause a lot of hair fall problems?
Yes, it can, certainly, yes. And again, it's because stress hormones can affect other hormones in your body. Everything, hormones are messengers, right? That's what hormones are. In our body, they're messengers. So they're taking messages from one part of our body to another. And if there is an imbalance that happens anywhere, it can start having these effects. So, you know, hair fall can be a thyroid issue. Hair fall can be a sex hormone issue, so estrogen, progesterone issue. So, you know, you'll see the difference between how you basically held on to all your hair during pregnancy and then sort of let it all go right after. So, you know, it can be a few different hormones that can affect the health of your hair. So yes, it can certainly cause hair fall. What can you do about it is, you know, trying to incorporate a few ways to reduce the stress so that indirectly it then has an impact on your hair. And skin as well. Yeah, hair and skin normally go together.
Mm-hmm. So anything that can help, like nutrients, like what can I eat more to make it less like hair fall?
Well, it would start out with, I would suggest, you know, paying attention to how often you're eating during the day. If you're able to grab like quick snacks during the day, that would be important. And then making sure that you don't have sort of like cravings. If you do, then that's something that needs to be addressed. And then what types of foods, again, would be like, fatty foods are great for skin health, for hair health as well. So you have the fish you can eat, avocados, what type of oils you're using in your cooking, all of those things can help as well. But more often than not, it's not like a direct eat this, your hair will be better. It's eat this or do these things, so these hormones are feeling better, so then in turn your hair will be better. So it's never, unfortunately, it's not a,
but
don't sapat khani phala samurta times.
yeah.
Akshita, I have a question along those lines. A great presentation, thank you.
Thank
About
you.
about the hair fall, what are your thoughts on the biotin or some of the supplements that you can take? I've been taking it, but
I think biotin, vitamin E is another one that's recommended when people have hair fall. So yeah, these can be useful, but again, it depends on why you have the hair fall. If it's a direct deficiency you're addressing, then yes. But then what's causing the deficiency? So if you don't address the what's causing the deficiency, you'll be taking biotin forever, or vitamin E, or any of these other things. So it's, it can help, but it won't solve the problem. That's the, so that's why for some people it works and some people it doesn't. Some people it works for a little point and then stops. It's because supplements end up sort of being a band-aid rather than fixing the issue at hand. And so it can work for a bit, but not always.
Yeah, from what you say, I am reminded of Dean Adele. He always used to say taking supplements is like having very expensive urine.
Yeah, and in many cases, yes. And in many cases that actually happens. And that's why when we usually recommend supplements, we have, like, my first appointment usually is an hour to an hour and a half where I'm going through a full medical history, daily routines, everything. Like, I know the person at the end of the day better than some of their family members too. And so, but that's important to know what you recommend. But otherwise, yes, a lot of these multivitamins and things you take, that's basically what it is. You're creating expensive urine. And things like Centrum, it's shellac. Your body won't digest that easily. And most people who take multivitamins are older. Your digestion is already sort of, lost some of its potency, not fully, but some of it, and you're on multiple medications. So the chances that you're able to digest a thing like Centrum supplements that are shellac, is much lower. So you need to make sure you find products that also work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Akshita.
Hi.
Hi, this is Kanchan here. Great presentation, great information. It's like, the real good bank full of knowledge, it's really good. Thank you so much for that.
I'm sure
I have a
not
question.
At all biased that you're my sister, but sure.
No, most of it I can match, whatever you said, I say the same thing with my friends or, whoever talks about these topics. It's really interesting and very nice, great information, good knowledge. One question I have for you is, as far as multivitamins are concerned, do you have any particular time of the day which will be good to absorb most of it, or not really?
For multivitamins, again, like I said, it's a lot that's crammed into a pill. So, if you have to take it or if you really want to take it.
But I take this one, as you said. This is the one I have been taking since last almost 2 years. So, I believe in this more than any other vitamin.
I know. So here's the thing. Being in clinical work now for 10 years and having been in the research world for 7 years before that, I can tell you this: nothing beats anecdotal evidence. And I've seen this again and again and again with my clients. If somebody else has told them that something did a miracle cure for them, they will believe that person over any research I can give them, unless I'm extremely, sort of nag them into it, right?
Yeah.
So definitely, if there's something that you think works for you, you want to continue to take it, I would recommend taking it with a meal, because then again, at that point, your body is getting the signals it needs, that it needs to release the digestive juices and, go through this whole function. So the chances
Okay.
of you absorbing something will be higher at that point. And you can choose. Most of the time I recommend breakfast, just because then
Okay.
it's done and over with for the day. You
Exactly.
don't have to think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
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 So that would be, you know, like a breakfast. If you're eating a good breakfast in the morning, have it with that.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
the info.
What was the brand that you said? I just.
Oh, the one I usually recommend, like Garden of Life. That's one. And then I'm trying to think of the other ones. Usually it's Garden of Life that I end up recommending to most people. You can find it in health food stores, and I'm pretty sure it should be available in California as well. Because I've seen they have like huge booths at the events that I attend. So I'm sure they're all over the country. So
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Akshata. This is Chitra here.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. So excellent presentation and
Thank
wonderful
you.
information. And, my question, I'm going to go back to the supplements.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it needs to be taken with food.
Yeah.
Right? So most often I usually forget.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe an hour after taking my lunch or dinner, I remember.
Yeah.
Would you suggest taking it? I mean, what I'm trying to find out is there a time frame where you can actually take it after taking a meal?
Yeah. You know, if it's been an hour or two, I would recommend just eating something small with it as well, just to again get those systems going in your body. Normally for digestion, if you think of the route it has to go through, within an hour or so, it's sort of gone pretty further down. So, you know, it would be best if you've gone past the hour. I would recommend eating something small with it, even if it's just a few nuts or, you know, a bite of a fruit or a few berries or like whatever. You know, just have something small with it, just so it kicks your body's digestive system up again, just to make sure you're doing okay. But yeah, that is something that happens often. People tend to forget. So yeah, the other thing to do would be, you know, in terms of forming a habit, always connect it to a habit you already have. It makes it easier. And so, you know, if I have certain ones that have to be taken in the morning, I recommend to people keep it next to your toothbrush so that you're brushing your teeth, you see it, you take it. But if there are others that are more flexible, then yeah, if you can have it with your meal, keep it somewhere that it's visible to you. What do you have in the morning? Is it something sort of this similar thing every day? Then keep it near there so it's available. If not, if you forget and you remember later, saying to yourself, oh, I'll take it with my next meal, you'll forget that time as well, and it'll just keep getting.
What usually happens, like, okay, it's been an hour, okay, let me take it tomorrow, and then
tomorrow, exactly, yeah. So then, you know, it's best if it's, you know, you think about how long it's been. If it's been over an hour, then just have something like a bite or something with it, and that'll just be better.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Akshata. Really excellent presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Just a question away from the supplements. I do a lot of supplement questions, but so you mentioned that, you know, monitor, if you sit in front of the monitor, you tend to just, you know, towards it आणि hang pure muscles तुम्हाला अशी massage करत म्हणून. So can you just show us if you
yeah, sure. Yeah, so I was saying, you know, just go round and round around your cheeks. First, check if you're clenching your jaw, because that's what a lot of us tend to do if we're seated for long. So just unclench your jaw, loosen that. And then you just sort of rub all of these muscles here, your jaw muscles, you know, under your ear, behind your ear, and then you go down your neck. These scalene muscles that are here, you just sort of rub those out, and then you go to the back and you rub your neck muscles out. Like I said, if somebody can do it for you, it feels more relaxing because then you don't have your own arms up. But if not, you can do it for yourself as well. And what I was saying was take your finger and just push your chin back. Because yeah, you know, just doing that can change your posture quite a bit, because all of us do it. If you're on your phone, if you're on the laptop or the iPad, whatever, we all tend to do this. And so just sort of push your head back, and it because, you know, if you think about muscle tension, every degree that your head is forward, I think puts an extra 10 pounds or something like that on your spine. So now everything's starting to tighten up just to sort of manage that posture you've created. So this is actually now called text neck. right? Because you're always like this. So they're calling it text neck. And it's a common thing that my husband, Greg, sees in the clinic. He's a chiropractor. So it's a common thing that he sees then he has to do a lot of work on the muscles and things like that to loosen it up and, make sure it doesn't happen again. But posture realignment is important.
Thank you. Because with online school, so all the kids are on the screen for so long. I'm actually concerned about their eyes, their neck. And
Yeah. So basically what you can do is, I forget what it's called. It's called something release pose. I forget the first part of it. But the idea is that when you're on laptops or looking at things, you're always like this, right? So you sit on your chair and you do the exact opposite, which is just open up like that. And that just helps loosen and open up all of these muscles. So the opposite of what you're doing, just open yourself up like that. And if they can do it, a couple of times during the day, it will just make sure that their shoulders don't get rolled forward, because that becomes a common thing. Your shoulders roll forward. The other exercise that they can do is called putting your elbows in your back pocket. So you keep your arms down and you just like, if you can see my shoulders, if they're like this, pushing your elbows back pushes your shoulders back, right? So just doing that a few times. What you're trying to do is lengthen these muscles, which normally get tied up like this.
Correct. Thank you so much.
Yeah, elbows in the back pocket, and then I forget what the release is, but it's called a release pose like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Akshata, for a wonderful presentation. Your communication skills are excellent, and I think the way how you answered the questions is very amazing. And hey, Preeti and Kedar, thank you for doing these such valuable programs that you have been doing to get the community together and for us to learn great things from some amazing professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you, Vivek. And Akshata, just to give you some perspective, Vivek is himself a doctor and he's amazing.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Akshata, fantastic presentation. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Kedar. It was very nice to meet everyone. This is a bit of an odd way. I don't do this very often. Normally I have an audience to speak with and it's easier. But this was really nice getting to see everyone, whoever's sharing videos, that is.
Thank you, Akshata.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate your time and to put efforts. You have prepared such a beautiful presentation and answered questions. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll be happy to do this again if you're interested.
Sure. Oh, thank you. Definitely.
Yeah.
Bye.
Anyone has any questions before we end the session? If not, Akshata was kind enough to say that we can reach out to her if you have any questions. And hopefully, Akshata, is there any way we can consult you professionally also now since everything is online?
Yeah. Well, I do have patients across the country, and I had some for a while even in India. Right now, that's a bit difficult with not being able to ship things over easily. But yeah, I do online consultations, and so yeah, you can reach out to me and we can talk about it. And we're also doing, because we know how difficult it's just been for everybody in terms of work and budget and things like that. So we're currently doing a discount coupon as well for the next month. So if anyone's interested, certainly yes. And then you can find me on YouTube and just keep up to date on other videos that I share.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Akshata.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Tina.
Akshata.
Yeah.
With that, we conclude our Kauka Vimarsh session for today, and thank Akshata for all her efforts and time and knowledge transfer to all of us and patiently answering our questions. And thank you to all of you for attending and for asking such good questions and for having such a beautiful Vimarsh. So thanks everyone. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you again.